What's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Space City X-Files. This is Rick, of course, your host. Going to be taking you through this story. And so I really appreciate you taking your time and listening. And hope to express my appreciation with another badass episode for you. And so it seems like you guys and girls really dug the cryptid episodes. And so, honestly, I did too. And because of that, that's what I have for you this week. I got another awesome story for you this week. And, so the topic of this week's story is about a hellhound that terrorized the Norfolk coast area in England for centuries. And so, according to popular legend, he moves as fast and as quiet as death, which is just one of the reasons why people are afraid of him. Afraid of it. And so, the beast is also so terrorizing that not even the sanctitude of a church could save a couple of people who fell victim to the hellhound. And as if his features weren't enough to haunt your dreams forever, apparently even locking eyes with the hound is an omen for an impending death itself. So to summarize it, this is one BBC. Big Bad Canine, that is. And now, the story of the hellhound, Black Shuck. And so before we get into the episode, just give me a few minutes to say a few words. And I would just like to say, of course, the Space City X-Files appreciates all the support you give week in and week out. And everything that we've been able to accomplish that's been through with your help. And so if you would like to know how you can become a supporter of the show, there are 3 main ways to do that, and I'll give you the details now. And so the first way is, if you would like to support by becoming a member, you can go to our website and click on the Patreon tab, and there it's going to give you a few options, $5 a month or $10 a month. Anyways, when you sign up, you're going to get unreleased full episodes, access to our private Discord group, and we're going to give you free merchandise. And that's going to come to you at random times. Secondly, if you're not ready for a monthly subscription, that's all right. If you would like to make a one-time donation, at the website, there's a support with the tip tab, and there you can type in whatever amount you want. 50 cents, $1, $5, whatever. It is all appreciated the same. And because we're dedicated, of course, to elevating the quality of the program, all our proceeds always go back into the show to benefit the final product. And the last and most effective way to support the show is leave us a review. After you listen, whatever platform you listen on, just go down there and type how great it was and how much you enjoyed yourself. And I can't say how important this is, because with your feedback, we can improve our show and we can bring in new listeners, which is priceless. One last shameless plug. Our show store is also open, and it's also on the website. And it's also stocked with hoodies, tees, stickers, all kinds of cool shit. And that also helps support the show also. And that concludes the announcements. All right. So, to give you an overview on how this episode will unfold, first, we are going to look at the Norfolk coast to get a feel of the surroundings. And then we're going to take a look at the area's history to try to find out if there's anything that could be causing this apparition to appear. Once we've familiarized ourselves enough to have a clear understanding of the area, we can then start to go over the case details. Now, first and foremost, we'll dive into the characteristics of Black Shuck. Who is it? What does it do? What's its legend? All that good stuff. We'll take a look at the time frame and try to pinpoint when the first sighting occurred. And after that, we can start looking at personal accounts of people who had firsthand experiences with the beast. Now, when we've heard everything there is to hear about the beast, we can then dive into the local theories on what Black Shuck is thought to be. And finally, to wrap it up, we can let you know what our personal experience and opinion is of the matter. And as always, our hope is to lay out the case details in a way that helps you come to your own conclusion on what the subject is. All right? We're not telling you what to believe. In fact, once you finish the episode, we'd love it if you join us on Reddit and shared your opinion on what you thought of the case, because it's just more fun that way. You know, we want it to be a two-lane road. And so without further delay, let's get started. And so first, let's take a look at the location where the legend of Black Shuck began. And so in order to do that, we need to go visit the United Kingdom, and specifically the Norfolk and Suffolk area. And I'm sorry if I get this wrong, but from what I understand, this is considered the East Anglia area. Send me an email and tell me how stupid I am if I'm wrong about that. It won't hurt my feelings. And now, I know that's a pretty broad area, so to kind of compartmentalize the investigation, we're going to focus on the main areas associated with the wildest claims, all right? And so in order to do that, we're going to look at 3 to 4 little towns in the area, and they happen to be Peterborough, Stamford, Cambridge, Bungay, and Blythburgh. And so now these towns, they're all pretty close together. I mean, they're all in the same area, but they have all been the location of some strange stuff when it comes to our hellhound. And so one of the things I like to do is I like to get a sense of the area first. You know, I mean, what are we looking at here? Was there wars in this area? Was it a place of controversy? Was there great tragedies that went down here? Has there been a history of unjust treatment towards the town people? And I look at this because it can sometimes be a telltale sign of why strange shit goes down there. Okay? And by doing some quick searches and brushing up on my UK history, I can tell you that this place has had all 3 of those go down at some point in time. Depending on who you talk to, of course. I mean, we're talking about a place that's, this place has been inhabited since around 5000 BC. And so you know there's going to be some history, right? And every country is going to have their blemishes. And so I'm not trying to pick on the UK or anything like that, because they also have a very wonderful side to their history. And very, very inspirational historical figures that come from there. And I'm going to kind of get off topic for a little bit right here, but I have to bring this person up. And the person that I have to mention is somebody called King Alfred the Great. And so he took power for the Anglo-Saxons, who happened to be the group occupying that area at the time. And King Alfred would be the first king in England's history to realize that reading and writing were paramount to the success of a civilization and its people. And he dedicated himself and seen it as his duty to make that a reality. So his priority was education. And it's because of his groundwork that England, from his reign until the 12th century, stood out as unique amongst all the rest of medieval Europe. They were special because of the work that he started. And so if you like history, I recommend you check out his story because it's really cool, if you enjoy that kind of stuff. So, but anyways, back to the point. It's sometimes thought that pain and anguish can bring on apparitions of this sort to an area. And so one of the main struggles that I found during the early times of the East Anglia was religion. Big surprise, right? So I heard it somewhere one time, and I can't remember where, and I'm not going to try to. But the saying went like this. It says, so long there has been a familiarity of a God, so has there been the killing in the name of it. And that's deep, right? So, what was going on here was around the time of the first appearance of Black Shuck. The king at the time was forcefully appointing his own kin to the head of the churches in Peterborough. And this pissed a lot of people off, all right? And it caused them to pretty much accuse the king of basically colluding. When King Henry died and he had no heir to take his place, his ex-wife had to take power shortly and become queen. And when she did, she changed the preferred religion of the country from Catholicism to a Protestant. And now this was all fine and dandy, right? That's cool. But the only problem is that she didn't sit in power very long. And when the next person was in charge, they changed the preferred religion back to Catholicism. And this shortly led to about 300 Protestants being burned at the stake for heresy. And so now, unfortunately, this kind of bullying didn't end there. And in fact, it would continue all the way up to and past the next time a Black Shuck appearance would be documented, which was in 1577. And so I'm not going to go into detail on what happened with these Black Shuck sightings for a reason, all right? Because we're going to go over those details next in case details. So all I'm doing now is giving you a history lesson on the area. Now, in the 16th century, there was still a failed connection with the church and the townsfolk, to put it simply. So in those times, the priory had like an unsafe amount of control of what went down in the provinces, and they weren't under a great amount of supervision, all right? They were kind of taking advantage of people. They were taking land, taking other property, behaving inappropriately with people's wives and daughters. You know, there was a great deal of injustice happening that way during that time. And so you have to ask the question, could this be another reason for Black Shuck showing up? I don't know. Hopefully we find that out soon. One thing that I can say, though, is that in 1562, the Queen at the time decided to reinstate a law to make witchcraft a capital punishment, which was, can you guess what it was? If you guessed death, you were correct. So, now what went down around this time, it was in no way comparable to what the Inquisition, to what happened during the Inquisition times. But, you know, there were witch hunters and there were thousands of people that were tried and put to death for being supposed witches. Now, some historians would say that this whole deal was more of a different type of witch hunt, meaning it was more of a good way to keep people in line, all right? So if you had a person who was becoming a nuisance, all of a sudden they would be accused of being a witch and they would be put to death. Or it was said that if a man if a man that was well liked in the community was unhappy with his marriage and his wife wouldn't give him divorce, so all of a sudden she would be declared a witch and put on trial, and then she'd be put to death, and that he would get what he wanted. And so it was kind of like they were using this law to basically, you know, make things happen for themselves. And so you have to ask the question again, could this be the reason for Black Shuck showing up during those times? And so basically you can decide that for yourself. Just let me finish giving you all the rest of the facts, okay? And so we heard a little bit about the history of the area, and we heard a little bit about what could have possibly contributed to Black Shuck appearing. But what about present day? Is there anything of significance during recent times? And well, from what I can tell, I mean, the place is a bit of a paranormal hotspot. And it's not surprising, though. You know, when you have a place steeped in this much history, sometimes these things just happen. Like if you ever go like walk through the old streets of Old Town New Orleans, you just kind of get a sense of things there, you know. At least I do. There's like an energy there. I'm just saying what I feel. I'm not trying to speak for everyone, and so apparently, after doing some research, there were a lot of apparitions that appeared around the area in old ruins and bunkers and castles around the area. But there was one thing that stood out to me the most. And you see, not too long ago, I was actually there. I wasn't there in person, but I was investigating a case in that area. And this case happened to be right down the road, actually, in a little place called Rendlesham. And does that ring a bell for you? Well, if you're a UFO enthusiast, then it's a dead giveaway. But if you're not, I'll just tell you what the place is. All right. So, Rendlesham is home to probably one of the most significant UFO sighting cases in the world. Some would say it's second only to Roswell. The Rendlesham Forest incident is one case that provided so much evidence that it really made it difficult to deny that something went down there. All right. So, to summarize it briefly, because this can be a whole episode because I've already done one on it. So basically, there was an Air Force base there in the 80s, and I think it's still there now, but I don't think it's being used for what it was back in the day. And anyway, the U.S. and the U.K., they had this kind of joint operations going on there. And one night, when some U.S. soldiers were standing guard, they see this light appear over the base. And this thing is zooming in and out of the woods, through the trees. And then it finally hovers over a weapon silo. And it is believed that this weapon silo was likely containing nuclear warheads at the time. And so the crazy thing is that one of the crazy things about this case was it just wasn't one person accounting these things. All right, there were multiple people there whenever this thing would appear. There were cops, there were soldiers, there were air traffic controllers, all seeing this thing do incredible maneuvers that should have been impossible. And so after a short time of kind of flying around doing these tricks, the UFO lands inside the forest and kind of hovers on the ground. And so one of the soldiers, Sergeant Jim Peniston, decides, okay, he's going to go check it out. And he has to go in alone because the radios are having crappy reception. So he tells one of the soldiers to wait at the edge of the forest. And he tells another soldier to head back towards the base. And they're going to kind of relay to each other because they're getting no range. And so Peniston goes in and he starts walking up to this spaceship that he sees there. And he actually gets close enough to touch the thing. And the moment that he does touch it, this code is like uploaded into his head. And it's a series of zeros and ones, zeros and ones, zeros and ones, but all put together in a nice little decorated package. And so Jim goes and meets this computer programmer or something. He's a computer whiz kid or whatever. But this guy ends up deciphering that code for him. And when they decipher that code ends up talking about a future civilization of ourselves that are struggling to survive, and they're given like warnings and messages to us. And in that sequence of code, there's coordinates of all kinds of landmarks all over the world, significant landmarks like the Great Pyramids, the Taj Mahal, the ruins in Mexico. All things that if you do a little bit more investigating, you'll see that these things are in sync with things that are called ley lines all over the world. And I can't spiral any more on this because it'll go on and on, but it's so crazy. And it seems like it's more than a great coincidence for these places to be connected, right? And so anyways, when you get done here, go check out the Rendlesham Forest episode if you haven't already, because it's awesome. And it'll kind of give you a little bit more context about the area. And so that should pretty much do it for this segment, all right? I think we learned everything that we can for now about the East Anglia area. And I'm sure I missed some stuff, but we're on a time crunch here. We only have so much time. And so we learned some things, and some were strange, some were cool. And but now I think we're ready to hear the case details, all right? So So first, let's answer the question, what is Black Shuck? And well, I think it's pretty safe to say that there's more than one of them. All right. So I don't think we're talking about a single entity here. I think there's many of them. And the way people have described Black Shuck are all pretty similar with a few variations, but mostly consistent. All right. The ones who have laid eyes on the creature say that he's this huge, massive wolf-type dog or hellhound that stands as big as a horse or even a calf. His coat is thick and shaggy and is as black as the inside of a coffin, buried in the deepest, darkest grave that you could ever imagine. One of the most terrifying things about Black Shuck are his eyes, or his eye. And this is where the descriptions vary. So some say that he has two large eyes like the size of saucers that glow red or green. And others will say that the hellhound is a cyclops with one large evil eye glowing red or green right in the middle of its giant head. Now, of course, he has a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth, right? I mean, you can't forget that. So, with this description here, do I really need to go on and say what a cryptid like this can do to a person? Just trust me when I say that, nobody would escape from this thing, all right? But that's not all, I mean, according to legend, it's not only Shuck's brute strength that you should fear, okay? Because it's also the very act of seeing him that's dangerous. The rumor is that if you lay eyes on Shuck, or if he reveals himself to you, that is an omen for your impending death that would usually occur within the next year or so. And now, I also read too that his appearance means that there is an impending catastrophe coming. So it's not always meant that the harm will befall a single person. Okay, sometimes it means a whole area. And I found this very interesting because this is an idea that is associated with the Mothman lore. And so if you listen to the Mothman episode, you would see that, well, first off, assuming that Mothman wasn't the one who actually made the Silver Bridge collapse, assuming that was not him, he was never associated with the deaths of humans. But his presence of him being in certain areas where natural disasters happened, it started giving people the impression that he was a symbol of some type of warning. And so it's a possibility that there's a similarity between these two, with that aspect. The only difference is that with Black Shuck, he has gone on a murder rampage before. All right, so he stands alone on that one. Yeah, I mean, Black Shuck, he don't take no crap, and we'll learn about what he did in just a few moments. But and so here is where the stories of Black Shuck can also vary. Now, in some stories, he's a cold-blooded killer, right? But in others, he was a protector of the weak. And so what I'm starting to see is that this kind of just really boils down to who you're talking to. And, for all we know, maybe he was both. Maybe Shuck was neither good nor evil. Maybe he was just Shuck. And so, but you kind of have to say, though, because him being a protector was a common story for him, that if he did play that role, that he or whatever the creature is, they possibly have some type of moral compass, right? And so just based off of these characteristics, I think we're starting to have more of an understanding of what Shuck is, and now we know what he looks like. But where does he come from? And the answer is no one really knows. There are many theories, though, and I mean, one of them is since he's a hellhound, I guess, one would have to say that he's from hell. And of course, to do that, you'd have to believe that there was such a place that existed. But the other main theory I heard on where he comes from is a familiar one. And it's familiar because we just went over it on the Honey Island Swamp Monster episode. And so it's thought that these cryptids, and not just Black Shuck, but Bigfoot, the Honey Island Swamp Monster, Loch Ness, all these cryptids are basically interdimensional beings that are from Earth. They live on Earth. They're just in another realm on Earth, a realm that we cannot see or enter, at least on purpose, that is. Now, these creatures, however, do possess the ability to pass through something of a veil, if you would, whenever they please. Now, what their motivation is to do that for is it's unknown. It could be by accident. It could be for some reason. I don't know. We don't know. But supposedly this is the reason why their sightings are so rare, because whenever they disappear, they're not just hiding out. They're leaving they're leaving a realm in which we can see, at least. Leaving to a realm that we cannot see. All right, so I think that with that information there, I think that we can now move on to what Black Shuck has done in the East Anglia area. And so, with that, the very first recording was in 1127 AD, and we spoke about this briefly earlier in the account with King Henry trying to kind of appoint his cousin as the abbot of Peterborough. And so, let me tell you where I got that information from. So, back in the day, when a new town was created, or when a new church was formed, those two things kind of coincided with each other. So, let's just say a new town was created. All right. So, and they set up a new church. So, what they would do is that they would start their chronicles, and the chronicle is basically the history of their city, recorded by somebody who was supposed to be not biased, hopefully. So, what they would do is that they would borrow the chronicle from their neighboring town, and they would copy it up until the day that they were established. All right? So, from that point going forward, it would be their own personal story. All right? They record it the way they want to. And so, in the Chronicle of Peterborough, whoever the author was, I'm not 100% sure. But he was talking about the going-ons, and you know what? I'll just read you what he says. All right, so this is quoted from the Peterborough Chronicle, and it says, "Let no one be surprised at the truth of what we are about to relate, for it is common knowledge throughout the whole country that immediately after Abbot Henry of Poitou, after his arrival at Peterborough Abbey, it was the Sunday when they sing Exurge Choir. Many men both saw and heard a great number of huntsmen hunting. The huntsmen were black, huge, and hideous, and rode on black horses and on black he-goats. And the hounds were jet black with eyes like saucers and horrible. This was seen in the very deer park of the town of Peterborough, and in all the woods that stretched from that same town to Stamford. And in the night the monks heard them sounding and winding their horns. Reliable witnesses who kept watch in the night declared that there might have well been as many as 20 or 30 of them winding their horns, as they could tell. This was seen and heard from the time of his arrival all through Lent, right up to Easter." End quote. So, as you can see here, they were not too happy about the new abbot, and they blamed the omen of the wild hunt on him. And so, now this wild hunt thing has been interpreted in many ways throughout history in different cultures. And so, first, let's describe what it is. All right. So, first off, the wild hunt. It's not a human thing. All right. This is a supernatural thing. Two, the wild hunt typically has a host, and the host is someone of great importance that lived at one time. For example, it could be Odin, or it could be King Arthur. Basically, somebody who has a great deal of mythology about them. Then there will be the hunters. All right, the hunters in European lore are thought to be something called the Gwyn ap Nudd. which translates to an otherworldly great warrior with blackened faces. Hence the description of the Chronicle writers, right? Did you get that description that he was given? The huge black and rode on black horses. This is what he was describing. And then finally you have the hellhounds, which are the ones doing the work on the grounds, getting dirty, getting their hands dirty, kicking some ass. And so now these wild hunt omens, they can be a good sign or they can be a bad sign. But it seems that you have to kind of read the room to determine which it is. But in this case, it definitely would have been a bad sign. And so if it's meant to be a good sign, the passing of the wild hunt would bring blessings to the land. If it was meant to be a bad sign, it meant that they were coming for the troublemakers. All right. So whoever it was that was causing the shit to go down, they were about to get taken out. And so after Henry's death, the Chronicle writer kind of alluded back to this omen, like as, well, you see, justice had been served. And so that summarizes one of the earliest accounts of Black Shuck. Now, the most prominent of attacks would come on the same day of each other, on August 4th in 1577, and this would occur at two different churches located about 12 miles apart from each other. Something or someone really must have pissed Shuck off that day. And it said that he made his appearance at the Holy Trinity Church in Blytheburg first, which is a little town right off the coast, aside of the A12 freeway or highway. It was a violent and rainy night that night. And the congregation was kind of huddled in the church, perhaps trying to wait out the pending storm, right? And so the account states that a violent clap of thunder, the account states that at the sound of a violent clap of thunder, the doors of the church burst open, and there stood the hellhound with his eyes glowing red like hot coals when they're kissed by the breeze of a constant wind. So the people wailed in terror. Only Black Shuck did not massacre everyone in the room, which he most certainly could have done if he wanted to. No, instead he bolted up the aisle in what was described as a blur, much too fast to be anything from this realm, all the way up to the front where there were huddled together a man and a boy. Now Shuck attacked them and killed them both, and with a burst of energy he bolted back for the door, his aftershock causing the church's steeple to collapse down on the lifeless bodies of his victims. When Black Shuck reached the doors, he pounded them open with his paws and flew out like a bolt of lightning. But when the people went to look at the doors of the church, 4 consecutive burn marks on each side laid where his beastly claws had made contact. Now to this day those marks are on display, although now they have a name, and they call them the devil's fingerprints. And so some will argue that, this was nothing extraordinary. This was just an electrical storm. That's what caused the steeple to fall, and it was just a regular dog that came in and attacked the people. But isn't that kind of hard to believe? That's kind of a big coincidence, right? I mean, the marks on the door were claimed to be from like an electric shock or maybe a direct hit from a lightning bolt. Nothing out of the ordinary, they claim. Certainly not some ghostly hellhound. But if that's the case, if it was just from an ordinary accident, then why keep it around all these years? Why kind of keep it on display? Why not replace the doors? I mean, you're not, you fixed the steeple, you fixed everything else. Why not the doors? And so I don't know. Those are just the questions that I ask myself when thinking about this mystery. But the drama isn't over yet, so allow me to continue. So Shuck's warpath was not finished though, and within seconds he, or possibly another similar hellhound, appears at another church about 12 miles north in a town called Bungay. Now, this time Black Shuck would appear at the St. Mary's Church, and here, let me read you an excerpt from a clergyman named Abraham Fleming. And this is his account on what the beast did. And so I'm quoting Fleming here, and he states, "The black dog, or divil, in such a likeness, God he knoweth all who worketh all, running all along down the body of the church with great swiftness and incredible haste, among the people, in visible form and shape, passed between two persons as they were kneeling upon their knees and occupied in prayer as it seemed, wrung the necks of them both at one instance clean backward, and something that even at a moment where they were kneeled, they strangely died." And so now on this account, Shuck did not stop at them two. So apparently he kept on killing people after that, left and right. And he even started a fire in the church's main room. And so let's read this poem from Fleming. And this is quoted. It says, "All down the church in the midst of fire, the hellish monster flew, and passing onward to the choir, he many people slew." And so, this end quote. And so the mental picture I get from this account is I can just picture like just chaos. But I asked myself a question like why was this allowed to happen? In a dedicated holy place of all places, why was this allowed to happen? Then the only conclusion that I can come to is maybe the people around that time weren't so holy. Anyways, that's a whole nother subject. And it doesn't stop there. On and on through history until present day, people still speak of seeing Black Shuck, the old hellhound that roams the dark and dangerous back roads. The apparition of the A10 and the A12, they say. And so with that brings us around to local theories. And then finally we can wrap it up by letting you in on what we think about the case of Black Shuck. And but before we do that, as always, I have to say that I look forward to hearing what you all think about the episode. And I appreciated the ones that came and chatted about the Dyatlov Pass episode. That was awesome. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this one. So if you want to participate, share your thoughts, or you have a Black Shuck encounter that you want to share, you can send me an email if you don't do the social media thing. And I don't really blame you if you don't. But my email is info@spacecityxfiles.com, and you can get me there at any time. For those that do like the social media group scene, you can visit us on Reddit. Just type in our name in the search bar, and the episode will be posted there with a live forum to chat on. And all right, so local theories. What is the Black Shuck thought to be in the East Anglia area? And so, as everything that is shrouded in mystery, you have two categories. The ones that believe it and the ones that think it's a crock of shit. And it's no different with the case of Black Shuck. I mean, you got some that'll be like, oh, hell yeah, Black Shuck is real. I seen him down by the woods the other day just floating around and shit. And then you have the other side that claims Black Shuck was created out of a time when people were under great duress. And I gotta say that kind of makes sense, I mean, Black Shuck was connected to a lot of churches and a lot of politics at the time. So it's either that he was created to keep the people in fear and keep them in line, or he was possibly created by the people to tell the unwanted people in charge, like, hey, watch out, because something can come and get you at any time. Or here's another theory. The other theory is that it was real. That it was it wasn't a ghost or anything like that, but it was just a really, really big, scary looking dog. And not so long ago, in May of 2014, a huge skeleton of a dog was discovered in a shallow grave buried only 20 inches in the ground. So 20 inches, that's a little bit less than 2 foot. And if this wasn't odd enough, in the area which it was found was only a few miles between the two churches that Black Shuck attacked in 1577. And so if that's not wild enough for you, the bones were said to be carbon dated because they knew where they were old, but they wanted to find out exactly how old they are. And so after the story aired, they're like, okay, we're gonna get to the bottom of this. We're gonna send them off and get them radio carbon dated. Well, then they just disappear entirely. That's pretty convenient, right? I mean, one thing I'll say is that sometimes people fear the truth getting out because they know that there's a fragile sense of understanding that we think we have. And because of that, they'll do anything to protect it. But, I'll end it on that note. But, anyways, that about wraps it up for this week. And so, I forgot. And so real quick, what I'll do is I'll share my, my opinion on what the whole Black Shuck thing is. And, let me hit the drum roll real quick. So, I think that Black Shuck is real. That's all I got to say about the whole thing. Black Shuck, Bigfoot, Swamp Monster, and Mothman, they're all chilling out right now, laughing at people who think they're fake. And they're just going to all show up one day just walking down the street. I'm kidding. But, I'm like Mulder. Like, I want to believe, though. I do. I really do. But no matter what, real or fake, though, this case was fun to research. There was a cool amount of history, a cool amount of real life history. It was just fun. I'm glad I got to share it with y'all. And as always, guys, I appreciate y'all listening. Thank you for spending your time with me. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to spread the word, like, and share, and all that good stuff. And all right, well, that's another episode in the books. This is Rick with the Space City X-Files, and I'll see you on the next one.